In the 92 years of the Southeastern Conference, there have been 101 conference champions. But wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. How can there be more champions than there have been years of SEC play? Well, allow me to introduce the concept of co-champions. For much of the conference's life, the champion was just whoever finished at the top of the conference. There were no divisions and no conference championship games, so you just needed two teams to go undefeated in conference play without playing each other, and you would get two SEC champions. Over this period, a two-way tie at the top occurred 7 times, and a three-way tie happened twice. While the concept may sound crazy nowadays, it's not all that weird in the grand scheme of Pole-era college football. What was truly bizarre was how champions were determined when teams played different amounts of conference games. But that's a concept we are going to revisit later in the video. Anyway, in 1992, the SEC added South Carolina and Arkansas, split the conference into an East and West division, and created the SEC championship game, with the 2 participants being the winners of each division. In the 33 years of title games, 3 champions have stuck out as complete outliers from all the rest. 3 teams that should not have even made it to the championship game that somehow found a way to take home the coveted SEC crown. The first team we are going to be talking about is the 2001 LSU Tigers. This team was led by second-year head coach Nick Saban, and they didn't have a great first half of their season, going 2-3 in their first 5 conference games, with losses to Ole Miss, Florida, and Tennessee. With 3 losses, they were all but out of the SEC West title race, with Ole Miss or Auburn looking like the favorites to win it. But a weird thing happened over the next few weeks. The division completely cannibalized itself. This would start with the game between Arkansas and Ole Miss. In perhaps the craziest game all year, the Razorbacks would upset the Eli Manning-led Rebels in 7 overtimes. This broke the record for the longest college football game ever played at the time. The score was tied at 17 at the end of regulation and ended 58-56. Manning threw for 312 yards and 6 touchdowns in the gut-wrenching defeat, and it was a loss that completely derailed their season, as Ole Miss would lose 3 of their last 4 to finish 4-4 in conference play. Meanwhile, Auburn had a chance to win the division with a win in the Iron Bowl, but the Tigers would shockingly get blown out at home against an unranked 4-5 Alabama team. Amidst all the chaos, LSU had calmly won their next 2 conference games against Arkansas and Alabama, and were sitting at second in the division going into the final week of the season. Their last game was against Auburn, so it was a winner-take-all scenario. After exchanging early touchdowns, it was all LSU, as they scored 20 unanswered points to take a 27-7 lead into the fourth quarter. Auburn could only muster up 1 touchdown in the final period, as LSU cruised to a 27-14 win. So just like that, LSU had somehow won the division with a 5-3 conference record. Now, winning the division is one thing, but winning the SEC championship is another. The Tigers would be facing the number 2 ranked Tennessee Volunteers, a team they had lost to earlier in the season. It seemed like Tennessee would roll over LSU on their way to a national championship appearance, and the Vols went into halftime up 17-7. LSU's starting quarterback had been knocked out of the game in the first half, so the Tigers were going to have to rely on backup quarterback and redshirt freshman Matt Mock to try and come back against this strong Tennessee team. Incredibly, he did just that, torching the Volunteer defense and leading his team to 24 second half points. The defense would also play its part with big stops and turnovers in a stunning 31-20 upset. In almost any other year, this team would not have even been in this game, so to show up and ruin Tennessee's national title hopes is truly unbelievable. The next team is the 2005 Georgia Bulldogs. This team was one of the frontrunners in the East for most of the season, as they started 5-0 in conference play. Things quickly went south though, with an injury to starting quarterback DJ Shockley and a loss to Florida. Going into their next game against number 15 Auburn, the Dogs knew they had to win, otherwise Florida would surely take home the division title. This game was an instant classic, with 9 lead changes throughout the contest. Late in the fourth quarter, Georgia took a 27-21 lead and got the ball back, but instantly gave up their advantage with a scoop and score by Auburn. Georgia then drove down the field to set up a go-ahead field goal with 3 minutes to go.
Cucho will try a field goal. He bobbled that snap, by the way, and the kick is good!
The Dogs had to hold on, but they just couldn't do it when it mattered most, as Auburn drove down the field and ripped their hearts out in the final seconds.
There it is. Place, kick, up, and it's good! Oh, sweet redemption!
So this knocked Georgia out and gave Florida the division, right? Well, no, because somehow the 12th ranked Gators had lost their final SEC game to an unranked South Carolina team. Now all Georgia had to do was beat Kentucky in their final conference game to win the division.
In emotion, they shift with him, and Shockley comes back. There he is! Touchdown in the corner! Like many seniors, Shockley playing his last home game today. Shockley underneath. who shoots right through to the 45, to the 40, the 35, the 30, the 25. He's gone. Danny Ware just shot right up the middle. Shockley takes it, drops back to throw, and he's going to throw it in the end zone, and it is going to be complete. Touchdown to McClendon.
Hey, man, I heard the seniors were outside just a second ago, so we got to start up again, baby.
The Dogs took care of business and were now going to the SEC Championship. Their opponent was the number 3 ranked LSU Tigers led by Jamarcus Russell. Georgia were big underdogs, especially considering that the 2 teams they lost to, Florida and Auburn, were teams that LSU had beaten. The Tigers had gone into Tuscaloosa and taken down number 4 Alabama a few weeks prior, so a 13th ranked Georgia team didn't seem very intimidating. However, with the way this game played out, it was easy to forget who was supposed to be the higher ranked team.
Shockley going to fake it and come back to pass. And we're going to go for a long pass. Touchdown! He's back, looks, fires. And we intercepted on our 48-yard line. DeMario Minter, who read it, caught the ball and then fell down. Takes it and drops back and looks. And he's going to go. He's got a man wide open. Touchdown in the right corner. We're coming off the corner, but they pick up. And we block it. It's on the 23. LSU's going to pick it up. We're going to tackle him on about the 14-yard line. Somebody shot up in there. We blitzed the man off the corner. They blocked him so hard, I don't know how he got up underneath. Fakes. Look, Shockley's going to run. He's got room. He's going to get to the 5-4-3-2 touchdown. Stops, throws a hard pass over to the right. We intercepted. Jennings has got a touchdown down on the far side. Tim Jennings read it. Cut in front of the receiver out around the 15. Jumped, caught the ball, and streaked in the corner and scored.
34-14 was the final score, as Georgia had demolished the clear best team in the SEC to take home their second SEC championship in 4 years. This game made absolutely no sense and seemed like a complete fluke, especially since Georgia shouldn't have even been there in the first place. To make things more confusing, the Dogs would go on to lose to number 11 West Virginia in the Sugar Bowl, while LSU completely blew out number 9 Miami in the Peach Bowl. It seemed like the Dogs caught the Tigers on their worst game of the season, and it resulted in a championship upset for the ages. The last team is the 2007 LSU Tigers. Now, this LSU team winning the SEC championship isn't all that surprising, since they came into the season ranked number 2 and didn't leave the top 5 at any point. However, they still had quite the roller coaster ride of a season. 2007 is considered by most college football fans to be the craziest year in college football history, with an unfathomable amount of upsets against top-ranked teams. Of course, LSU was one of the victims, as they would fall to Kentucky in triple overtime midway through the season.
Scott is the running back. Zinger in motion. Flynn under center. Hand off to Scott. Straight ahead. I don't think he got there. He didn't make it, and Kentucky wins the ball game.
They rolled through the rest of their schedule and were set to face an unranked Arkansas team at home in the final week of the season. Considering that LSU had already beaten 5 ranked teams this year, this Razorback team shouldn't have been much of a challenge, but Arkansas proved they were more than their record and ranking showed, as they stunned LSU in triple overtime.
One right, shotgun formation. Hector is back there with Flynn, and it's come to this. Flynn throws, intercepted, it is over. Arkansas wins, and LSU's national championship aspirations are over.
This was LSU's second triple overtime loss, and it's one that would normally knock them out of the SEC title game. But this one didn't, as LSU were already division champions coming into this game, since the West had cannibalized each other to the extreme. What a loss like this did do was knock LSU out of national title contention. Well, it would have done that if this were any other year besides 2007. After winning the SEC championship against Tennessee, LSU became the only 2-loss team in college football history to make the national championship game, and they would dominate Ohio State to take home their second national title in 5 years. For a team that wouldn't have even made it to the SEC championship game most years, to win the national championship is just insane, and it makes this LSU team one of, if not the biggest outlier in college football history. As an honorable mention, I'm going to briefly cover the 2010 South Carolina Gamecocks. This team did not win the SEC title, but they are a massive outlier when it comes to making the SEC championship game, as they benefited from the most imbalanced East and West divisions of all time. I mean, just look at those final standings. South Carolina was the only team in the East to finish with a winning conference record, a record that only would have been good for 4th in the West. The West finished with 5 ranked teams, all of which finished in the top 15 and were all higher ranked than South Carolina. The high point of the season was when the Gamecocks beat number 1 Alabama at home 35-21. As for the SEC championship game though, unfortunately for the Gamecocks, there would be no miracle in Atlanta, as they ran into the undefeated future national champions led by Heisman winner Cam Newton and promptly got blown out 56-17. Alright, now let's go back to the concept I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Different SEC teams playing different amounts of conference games. This concept sounds crazy, but it was commonplace up until 1978 when each team was locked into playing exactly 6 SEC games. So with this fact in mind, let's run a quick thought experiment. Team A plays 6 conference games and goes 5-1. Team B plays 5 conference games and goes 4-1. Let's say the teams did not play each other. Who gets to claim the SEC title? Does Team A get to claim it, or do both teams get to claim it as co-champions? The answer is only Team A gets to claim the SEC title, with Team B essentially being penalized for playing 1 less conference game. Interestingly, this only happens when both teams have at least 1 loss, so if both teams went undefeated, they would actually split the title as co-champions. Now let's change it up and say the 2 teams did play each other, with Team B having beaten Team A. Who gets to claim the SEC title now? Shockingly, the answer is still only Team A. This exact scenario played out in 1972 when Auburn beat Alabama in the famous Punt Bama Punt game, where the Tigers returned 2 blocked punts for touchdowns in a 17-16 win. Alabama would finish 7-1 in conference play, while Auburn would finish 6-1. So even though Auburn beat Alabama, the Crimson Tide won the SEC championship. Let's take a look at one more variation of this scenario. We're going to add Team C. This team played 8 conference games and went 6-2 in those conference games. With this team added, who gets to claim the SEC title? Even with this team added, Team A still gets the undisputed championship. Essentially, more wins puts you over a team even if you lost to them, and more losses puts a team below you even if that team has more wins than you. Incredibly, this exact scenario played out in 1950, with Kentucky losing to Tennessee and having less wins than Alabama, but still winning the undisputed SEC title. This bizarre rule set created lots of confusing SEC champions like the ones I just mentioned, with notable ones being 1953 Alabama, who went 4-0-3, or 1990 Tennessee, who went 5-1-1 and won it because Florida was ineligible due to NCAA probation. As funny as this system was, it was mind-numbingly stupid, and I think I speak for all college football fans when I say I'm glad we have the conference championship games now. Well, that's all I've got for you today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more of my content in the future, hit that subscribe button down below.